The referee stopped the match in the 67th minute. Not because someone had been injured. Not because of a foul. He simply blew his whistle, turned toward the sideline, and stared directly at me. I remember thinking, why is he looking at me? Then he started walking. My daughter, Rebecca, leaned toward me. Dad, please don't do anything embarrassing. I looked at her. I'm sitting in a chair. You know what I mean. Before I could answer, the referee reached the edge of the field. He was an older man, maybe in his early 60s, with gray hair and a face I couldn't quite place. His eyes moved from my face to the old blue and white scarf around my neck. Then he froze. Walter? My heart stopped. Nobody had called me that way in decades. The referee took another step. Walter Bennett? Rebecca gave a nervous little laugh. I'm sorry, she said. My father's getting older. You must have him confused with someone else. The referee didn't even look at her. He kept staring at me. You really don't remember me? I swallowed. There was something familiar about his face, but I couldn't place it. I'm sorry, I said. I don't. His expression changed. Not anger. Not disappointment. Something closer to disbelief. You saved my life. Rebecca's face went completely still. My grandson, Ethan, was standing 30 yards away on the pitch. He had stopped playing. He was staring at us too. I looked at the referee again. I'm afraid you're mistaken. He shook his head. No, Walter, I'm not. Then he lowered his voice. You were the reason I ever played football. Rebecca grabbed my arm. Dad, we're leaving. I looked at her. What? You heard him. The game is stopped. Ethan needs to focus. But the referee suddenly said something that made her release my arm. Rebecca? She turned. The referee looked at her for a moment. Then, back at me. She's your daughter? Yes. His face became strangely serious. Then she doesn't know. Rebecca's eyes widened. Know what? The referee didn't answer. He simply looked at me. And in that moment, I understood something. This wasn't about Ethan's match. It wasn't even really about football. Whatever this man remembered from 40 years ago. My daughter had never been told about it. And judging by the look on her face, she was about to find out. Rebecca pulled me away from the sideline before I could say anything. Dad, we're going home. Ethan's still playing. He can finish without us. I looked at her face. She wasn't angry anymore. She was nervous. That bothered me more than her insult had. Rebecca, I said quietly. Who is he? She didn't answer. The referee was still standing near the field, watching us. Finally, Rebecca said, I don't know. It was the way she said it that made me realize she was lying. I had raised her alone after her mother died. I knew every version of her voice, the angry one, the tired one, the embarrassed one. This was the voice she used when she was afraid I might ask the wrong question. I looked back at the referee. He had returned to the pitch, but before he walked away, he pointed at my scarf. Keep that, he called. I looked down. The scarf was old and faded, the blue almost gray from decades of washing. Rebecca had given it to me when Ethan was 12. At least, that's what I remembered. But suddenly the referee's words made me wonder. Where had that scarf actually come from? The whistle blew again. The match resumed. Ethan immediately received the ball. The opposing defender closed him down. I watched the boy's feet. He hesitated. Then he remembered what I'd told him earlier that morning. Don't follow the player. Watch the space he wants you to enter. Ethan changed direction. He slipped past the defender. The crowd erupted. Rebecca stared at the field. Then she looked at me. You told him to do that? Yes. You've been coaching him? No. Then what have you been doing? I smiled faintly. Watching. She shook her head. You always do this. Do what? Act like you know something nobody else knows. Before I could answer, Ethan crossed the ball. His teammate headed it into the net. The crowd exploded. 1-0. Ethan looked toward us. But he didn't celebrate with his teammates. He pointed directly at me. Rebecca saw it. Her expression softened for just a second. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen. The color disappeared from her face. "Who is it?" I asked. "Nobody." She declined the call. A second later, it rang again. This time, she stepped away. I watched her answer. "Yes?" There was a pause. Then she whispered, "That's impossible." She looked toward me, and for the first time that afternoon, I knew something was happening that had nothing to do with Ethan's football. She ended the call. I walked toward her. "Rebecca?" She slipped her phone into her pocket. "We need to talk." "About what?" She looked at my scarf, then at the referee, then back at me. "About where you got that scarf." "Where did you get that scarf?" Rebecca's question caught me off guard. I looked down at the faded blue and white fabric around my neck. "You gave it to me." "No, Dad, I didn't." Her answer came too quickly. I studied her face. "What do you mean?" She took a breath and lowered her voice. "I found it in Mom's things." That stopped me. My wife, Margaret, had been gone for 14 years. Rebecca knew I rarely touched the boxes we'd kept from her. There were too many memories in them, and I had never been good at reopening old wounds. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know what it meant." She glanced toward the referee. "Until today." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "What did you find?" "An envelope." "What was inside?" "A photograph." She pulled out her phone and showed me. The picture was old, slightly faded around the edges. I stared at it. There I was. Much younger. Maybe 34. Standing on a muddy football field beside 6 teenage boys. And beside me was the referee. Only he wasn't a referee then. He was a skinny kid with dark hair and a crooked smile. I recognized him immediately. "Michael?" Rebecca nodded. "You remember him?" I couldn't answer. Memories came back all at once. Rain. Floodlights. A broken changing room window. 6 boys waiting outside a locked clubhouse. And a decision I'd made that changed all of our lives. Rebecca stared at me. "Dad, what happened?" I folded the photograph carefully. "It's a long story." "Then tell me." Before I could respond, someone shouted from the field. Ethan had gone down. I turned. He was holding his ankle. The opposing player stood nearby, arguing with the referee. Rebecca immediately ran toward her son. I followed. Ethan tried to stand. "I'm okay, Mom." "You're not okay." "I can play." "No." He looked at me. "Grandpa?" I knelt beside him. "Don't worry about the game." His eyes filled with frustration. "This is my chance." I looked toward the referee. Michael was watching us. Then he walked over. He crouched beside Ethan. "You know what your grandfather used to tell me?" Ethan shook his head. "Never play through an injury just to prove you're tough." I looked at Michael. "You remember that?" He smiled. I remembered everything. Then he stood. "Your grandson needs to come off." Rebecca looked at him. "But the scouts." Michael shook his head. "There will be another match." Rebecca's expression hardened. "You don't understand." Michael looked at her calmly. "I understand exactly." Then he glanced at me. "Your father taught me that too." And suddenly Rebecca wasn't looking at Michael anymore. She was looking at me. Not like an old man. Not like someone who didn't understand football. But like a daughter who had just realized she knew almost nothing about her father's life. Michael waited until the medical staff had taken Ethan to the bench before he came back to us. Rebecca stood with her arms crossed. "Who was my father to you?" Michael looked at me. I gave him a small nod. "Tell her." He took a breath. "Your father wasn't just a football fan." Rebecca almost smiled. "I know he likes football." "No," Michael said. "You don't understand." He pointed toward the photograph still in my hand. That picture was taken in 1984. Rebecca looked at me. "You were 34. "Yes." "And those boys?" Michael nodded. "We were 16. He paused. "Our club was about to close." Rebecca frowned. "What does that have to do with Dad?" "Everything." Michael explained that the youth program had been running out of a neglected community field. The club couldn't afford proper equipment, the roof leaked, and the boys were about to lose their only place to play. Then one evening, the club director announced that the youth program was finished. No more training. No more matches. No more scholarships. Michael and the other boys were devastated. But your father didn't accept it, Michael said. Rebecca looked at me. You paid for it? I shook my head. Not exactly. Michael smiled. He did something better. He told her how I had spent months speaking to local businesses, collecting donations, repairing equipment, and convincing people that those 6 boys deserved one more chance. But there was something Rebecca didn't know. I had also been working 2 jobs at the time. One during the day, another at night. Every penny I made from the second job went toward keeping that youth program alive. Rebecca's expression changed. Why didn't you ever tell me? I looked away. 'Cause you were 8. That doesn't mean you couldn't tell me later. Michael nodded. He never wanted praise. Rebecca looked at him. But why did you say he saved your life? Michael became quiet. For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. My father drank, he said. Rebecca didn't move. When the club closed, I was going to leave school. I thought I had no future. Your father found out. Michael looked at me. He came to my house. I remembered that night. A broken porch light. A boy sitting on the front steps. And a father who had already given up on him. I told him I wasn't good enough, Michael continued. He told me something I've never forgotten. Rebecca whispered, What? Michael smiled. He said, You don't have to be good enough today. You just have to be willing to become better tomorrow. I lowered my eyes. Michael continued. That sentence kept me alive. Rebecca stared at me. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen. This time, she didn't answer. The name displayed on it was Ethan's Academy Scout. She looked at me. Dad. Yes? Why would the scout be calling me? Before I could answer, Michael glanced toward the phone. Then he said quietly, 'Cause there's another reason I recognized your father's name. Rebecca froze. Michael looked directly at me. The academy sent me his grandson's records this morning. My heart sank. What records? Michael's expression hardened. The ones someone tried to alter. What do you mean, altered? Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper. Michael looked toward the academy scout standing near the far side of the field. I don't know who did it, he said, but Ethan's file showed that he withdrew from consideration 2 weeks ago. Rebecca stared at him. He didn't withdraw. I know. Then who changed it? Michael didn't answer. My eyes went to my daughter. She was holding her phone tightly. Rebecca? She looked at me. I didn't do it. I didn't say you did. But you're thinking it. I'm thinking someone doesn't want Ethan getting noticed. Rebecca looked toward her son. Ethan was sitting on the bench, an ice pack against his ankle. His face was crushed. He had spent years preparing for this day. And now someone had apparently tried to make sure the scouts never saw him. Michael lowered his voice. There was something else. What? The withdrawal request came from the email address attached to Ethan's parent account. Rebecca's face went pale. That account only I can access. Silence. I looked at her. She looked at me. Then her phone buzzed. A message. She opened it. Her hands started shaking. What is it? I asked. She turned the screen toward me. It was from the academy. Urgent. Please contact us regarding Ethan Bennett's eligibility. Below it was an attached document. Rebecca opened it. I read the first line. Parent withdrawal and medical concern form. My stomach tightened. The form claimed Ethan had suffered a serious recurring ankle injury, and that his family had decided he should stop pursuing competitive football. Rebecca whispered, I never signed this. Michael took the phone. He studied the signature. Then he looked at me. This isn't your daughter's signature. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Then whose it? Nobody answered. The referee's whistle sounded in the distance. The match was almost over. Ethan suddenly stood up. Mom? Rebecca turned. What's wrong? Why is the coach telling everyone I quit? She froze. I walked toward my grandson. Who told you that? He looked at me. Coach said the academy thinks I'm not serious anymore. I glanced at Rebecca. She looked devastated. Ethan's voice cracked. Grandpa, did I do something wrong? I put my hand on his shoulder. No. But they think I quit. You didn't. Then why does everyone think I did? I looked at the field. Then at the old scarf around my neck. For 42 years, I had kept quiet about what happened at that football club. I had believed some things were better left in the past. But now someone was using the past to interfere with my grandson's future. Michael walked over. Walter. I turned. He held out his hand. I think it's time you told them. Told them what? The truth about what happened in 1984. Rebecca stared at us. What truth? Michael looked directly at her. Your father didn't just save 6 boys. He paused. He saved the club. Then he added quietly. And the person who tried to destroy it back then. His eyes moved toward the academy office. May be connected to what's happening to Ethan now. The match ended 2-1. Nobody celebrated. Not even Ethan. He sat on the bench with his injured ankle wrapped tightly, staring at the ground while the other players shook hands. Rebecca stood beside me, still holding the academy document. Dad, she said, what happened in 1984? I looked at Michael. He nodded. So I finally told her. The club was going bankrupt. Rebecca frowned. You said it was a youth program. It was. And you saved it? Not alone. Michael gave a quiet laugh. He's being modest. I ignored him. The club had debts. The owner wanted to sell the training ground. 6 boys would have lost everything. And you stopped him? I tried. What did you do? I found investors. Rebecca stared at me. Investors? Local businesses, a few supporters, people who cared about the boys. Michael interrupted. Your father also discovered something else. I looked at him sharply. Michael. No. He shook his head. It's time. Rebecca stepped closer. What? Michael lowered his voice. The club wasn't simply failing. He looked around to make sure nobody was listening. Someone was deliberately making it fail. Rebecca's eyes widened. What do you mean? Money was disappearing. I nodded slowly. Equipment payments, sponsorship money, youth funding. Who was taking it? I hesitated. Michael answered for me. Graham Whitmore. Rebecca recognized the name. The academy director? Yes. She looked toward the office. He's still here? Different position, Michael said. Same man. My stomach tightened. For 42 years, I had hoped I'd never hear that name again. Rebecca stared at me. Dad, are you saying Graham is behind Ethan's records? I don't know. But you think he is. I think we need proof. Michael nodded. That is exactly what I told the academy. Rebecca looked at the document again. But why would he care about Ethan? Michael's expression changed. 'Cause Ethan has something Graham wants. What? Attention. I didn't understand. Michael continued. 2 academy scouts had been watching Ethan for months. If Ethan gets signed, the youth program gets publicity, sponsors come back, money comes in. Rebecca looked confused. So why would Graham stop that? Michael looked at me. Because if the academy investigates Ethan's records, they may investigate the old financial records too. Silence. Suddenly the pieces began fitting together. The altered application. The false medical claim. The academy scout. The referee recognizing my name. 42 years of silence. Rebecca whispered. You knew all this? No. Then why didn't you tell me? 'Cause I thought it was over. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. You always think protecting us means keeping secrets. That sentence hurt. 'Cause she was right. Before I could answer, Ethan came toward us. Grandpa? I turned. He was holding something in his hand. An old photograph. Mom found this in the car. I took it. My breath caught. It was another photograph from 1984. But this one showed something I had never seen before. Behind the 6 boys stood Graham Whitmore. And in his hand was a folder. On the folder was a number. The exact number of dollars missing from the club's accounts. I looked at Michael. He whispered, Where did you get that? Ethan pointed toward the parking lot. A man gave it to me. My heart began pounding. What man? Ethan looked over my shoulder. He's standing over there. I turned. A gray-haired man was walking toward us, and I recognized him immediately. Graham Whitmore. Graham stopped a few feet away from us. He looked older than I remembered, but some faces don't really change. His eyes were exactly the same. Cold. Calculating. He looked at Ethan first. Then, at the photograph in my hand. Finally, he looked at me. Walter Bennett. I said nothing. Rebecca stepped between us. You gave my son that photograph? Graham smiled. I thought he deserved to know a little about his grandfather. I felt anger rising in my chest. You should have come to me. I tried. When? 42 years ago. Michael stepped forward. Don't. Graham's smile disappeared. This doesn't concern you. Michael laughed. That's funny. You spent your entire life pretending to be a hero, Walter. I looked at him. I never called myself a hero. No, Graham said. You let everyone else do it. Rebecca looked between us. Someone please tell me what's happening. Graham ignored her. He reached into his coat and pulled out another envelope. He handed it to me. Open it. I didn't move. What is it? Something your wife wanted you to have. My heart stopped. Don't mention Margaret. Why? Because she has nothing to do with this. Graham's expression changed. She had everything to do with it. Rebecca stepped forward. What are you talking about? Graham looked at her. Your mother knew what your father did. I stared at him. Leave her out of this. She kept the records. What records? Graham smiled. The original financial documents. Michael's face went pale. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Margaret had never told me. Not once. Graham handed the envelope to Rebecca. She hid them for 42 years. Rebecca looked at me. Dad? I couldn't speak. She opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. She read the first line. Then stopped. Her eyes filled with tears. What does it say? She looked at me. Mom wrote this to you. My hand started shaking. Read it. Rebecca swallowed. She said. Her voice broke. She said, Walter, if you're reading this, Graham has finally come back. Nobody moved. Rebecca continued. She said she was afraid he would try to hurt the club again. Michael looked at Graham. You knew about the letter. Graham smiled. I knew Margaret kept records. Where are they? I asked. His smile vanished. That is the problem. He looked at Ethan. Someone has already found them. My blood ran cold. Who? Graham turned toward the academy building. Ask your daughter. Rebecca stared at him. What does that mean? Graham didn't answer. Instead, he walked away. I looked at Rebecca. She looked terrified. Dad, what aren't you telling me? She shook her head. Nothing. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down. A message appeared. I know you found the records. Bring them tonight, or Ethan's academy opportunity disappears forever. Rebecca's hands began to tremble. I looked at her. Who sent that? She didn't answer. And suddenly I realized something far worse than Graham being back. My daughter had been hiding something from me too. I didn't ask Rebecca again. I waited. Sometimes silence tells you more than a question ever can. She stared at the message on her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen. Dad, I can explain. Then explain. She looked at Ethan. He was still sitting on the bench, unaware of what was happening. I found something 3 weeks ago, she said. What? Mom's old storage box. My chest tightened. The one from the attic? She nodded. It had your old football papers in it. Photographs, receipts, letters. Why didn't you tell me? Because I found something else. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Margaret, my wife. Rebecca handed it to me. I unfolded it carefully. There were only 4 lines. Walter, if someone ever comes looking for these records, don't trust them. They will tell you the past is finished. It isn't. I read it twice. Then I looked at Rebecca. You found the records? She nodded. Where? I don't know. You just said you found them. I found evidence that they existed. Rebecca. She started crying. I was scared. Of Graham? She shook her head. Of what would happen to Ethan. She explained that 3 weeks earlier, someone had contacted her through Ethan's academy account. They offered to guarantee Ethan a place at a major development program. All they wanted was one thing. The old financial records. Rebecca refused. Then the messages started. First, they threatened to withdraw Ethan's trial. Then they claimed they could ruin his reputation. Finally, they sent a photograph of our house. Someone had been watching us. I felt the anger rise slowly. You should have told me. I thought I could handle it. You're my daughter. I know. Her voice cracked. I didn't want you dragged into another fight over football. Another fight. The words stayed with me. Because Rebecca had finally said what she really believed. She thought football was the reason I had lost so much of my life. She thought I had sacrificed everything for a game. I looked at her. Your mother didn't think that. Rebecca wiped her eyes. What? She knew what football meant to me. I looked at the old scarf. And she knew what happened in 1984. Before Rebecca could respond, Michael approached. He had been listening. There is something you both need to see. He held out his phone. On the screen was an old newspaper article. The headline read, Local Volunteer Saves Youth Club from Closure. Underneath was my photograph. But the article had been cut. Someone had removed the bottom half. Michael zoomed in. Look here. There was a handwritten note in the margin. 3 words. The money trail. My heart began pounding. Michael looked at me. I found the complete article yesterday. Where? In the club archives. He paused. And Walter, the missing money wasn't just stolen. What do you mean? The money was transferred into another account. Rebecca whispered. Whose account? Michael looked directly at her. Your mother's. I stared at him. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Margaret had never stolen anything. I knew that. But if the records showed money going into her account, someone had deliberately created a trail. And whoever did it had spent 42 years making sure I never discovered it. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A man's voice said, Walter Bennett? Yes. Stop looking into the past. Who are you? A pause. Then, if you don't, your grandson won't play football again. The call ended. I looked at Rebecca. And for the first time that day, I wasn't thinking about the referee. I wasn't thinking about Graham. I was thinking about Ethan. Because someone had just made the mistake of threatening my grandson. And they had no idea what his grandfather was willing to do. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Rebecca. We sat at my kitchen table with Margaret's letter between us. For the first time in years, my daughter wasn't looking at me like an old man who needed protecting. She was looking at me like she needed answers. I'm sorry, Dad. I looked at her. For what? For saying you didn't understand football. I almost smiled. That part doesn't bother me. It should. No, you were worried about Ethan. She lowered her eyes. I was wrong. Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Michael stood outside. He was holding a battered cardboard box. I found it. My heart stopped. The records. He nodded. We brought the box inside. Inside were old bank statements, sponsorship receipts, club invoices, and dozens of handwritten notes. Then Rebecca pulled out one final envelope. Her mother's handwriting was on it. For Walter. I opened it. Margaret had written the truth. In 1984, Graham had been secretly moving club money into accounts controlled by people connected to him. When I discovered it, I confronted him. But before I could expose him, Graham threatened my family. Margaret had secretly copied everything. She had hidden the evidence because she believed that one day someone would need it. Then I saw the final page. There was a name. Graham Whitmore. And underneath it was a second name. I stared at it. Rebecca noticed. Dad? I couldn't speak. Michael took the paper. His face changed. What? Rebecca leaned closer. What does it say? Michael looked at me. Walter. The second name was Daniel Bennett, my younger brother. Rebecca stared at me. Uncle Daniel? I nodded slowly. Daniel had died 17 years ago. Everyone in the family had believed he had nothing to do with football, but Margaret's records suggested otherwise. He had been the person who originally introduced Graham to the club's finances. And suddenly, another memory came back. A conversation with Margaret the night before she died. She had told me, "Walter, some truths don't disappear. They wait." I had thought she was talking about grief. She wasn't. The next morning, I took the records to Michael. He contacted the academy. Within hours, the academy suspended Graham from all involvement with Ethan's trial. But Graham didn't go quietly. He arrived at my house. Rebecca opened the door. Graham looked past her. "Where are the records?" She didn't move. "You're finished." He laughed. "No, your father is." Then I stepped into the doorway. "You should have remembered something, Graham." He looked at me. "What?" I held up Margaret's letter. "My wife never forgot." His face went pale. And, for the first time in 42 years, Graham looked afraid of me. Graham stood in my doorway, staring at the letter in my hand. "You don't understand what you're holding," he said. I almost laughed. "That's what my daughter used to tell me about football." Rebecca looked at me. I continued. "But I've spent 42 years understanding one thing very well." Graham's face tightened. "What's that?" "People." Michael stepped inside behind me. "You should leave, Graham." Graham ignored him. "You think some old papers will destroy me?" "No," I said. "The truth will." His eyes moved toward Rebecca. "You really believe your father saved that club?" Rebecca answered before I could. "I believe him." That seemed to hurt Graham more than anything else. He turned toward me. "You ruined my life once." I shook my head. "No, your choices did." He started to respond, but Michael interrupted. "The academy has already contacted the league." Graham froze. Michael continued. "They have the original documents now." Graham looked at me. "You gave them the records?" "Yes." "You'll regret that." "No." I looked toward Ethan, who had quietly entered the room. He had heard everything. "Grandpa?" I turned. He was holding his football boots. "Does this mean I can't play anymore?" I walked toward him. "No." His eyes filled with tears. "Then why did everyone keep lying?" I knelt beside him. "Because sometimes adults become so afraid of losing something that they forget what matters." He looked at me. "What matters?" I smiled. "You." He hugged me. And for the first time that day, I stopped thinking about Graham. I stopped thinking about the old club. I stopped thinking about the records. I simply held my grandson. 3 weeks later, Ethan received an invitation to the academy trial. Michael was there. Rebecca was there. And I was sitting quietly in the same old chair beside the field. Before the trial began, Michael walked over. "You know," he said, "you were right about his positioning." I smiled. "I usually am." He laughed. Then he looked at my scarf. "You still have it." I touched the faded fabric. "Of course." Rebecca came over. She sat beside me. "Dad?" "Yes?" "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For thinking you were too old to understand." I looked at the field. "Rebecca, getting older doesn't mean forgetting everything." She smiled through her tears. "I'm glad you're my father." I squeezed her hand. Then Ethan stepped onto the pitch. He looked back at us, and I realized something. The referee hadn't recognized my name because I was important. He recognized it because someone had remembered what I had done when nobody was watching. That was the lesson I had spent 42 years learning. You don't build a legacy by making people remember your name. You build it by changing someone's life so deeply that, decades later, they remember it for you. The whistle blew. Ethan started running. And this time, I didn't give him any advice. I just watched. Because sometimes the greatest thing a grandfather can do is believe in someone long enough for them to believe in themselves. The trial lasted 90 minutes. I didn't speak once. I didn't need to. Ethan played the way I'd always known he could. He made mistakes. He lost the ball. He missed one easy chance. But he kept going. That mattered more to me than whether he scored. Near the end, Michael came and sat beside me. "You know what I remember most about you?" he asked. I smiled. "The terrible haircut?" He laughed. "No. You never treated us like children who needed saving." I looked at him. "You were boys who needed someone to believe in you." Michael nodded. "And now Ethan has that." I looked toward my grandson. He was standing near the halfway line, exhausted but smiling. Then the academy director walked onto the field. He spoke with Ethan for several minutes. Ethan looked toward me. His eyes widened. He ran over. "Grandpa." I stood. "What happened?" "I got in." Rebecca covered her mouth. Michael smiled. I hugged Ethan tightly. But then he whispered something that made me pull away. "They said the referee recommended me." I looked at Michael. He shrugged. "I only told them what I knew." Rebecca laughed through her tears. "You really couldn't let him have one normal day, could you?" Michael smiled. "Not when Walter Bennett is involved." For the first time, I didn't feel embarrassed hearing my name. For years, I had thought a person's legacy was something written on a plaque or printed in a newspaper. I was wrong. My legacy wasn't the club. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the old photograph. It wasn't even the referee remembering me after 42 years. It was Ethan. It was Michael. It was the 6 boys who had once stood outside a locked clubhouse wondering if their dreams were over. And perhaps, in some small way, it was Rebecca too. That evening, she came into my kitchen while I was making coffee. She placed something on the table. "My old scarf. I found something sewn inside it," she said. I turned it over. There was a tiny piece of fabric hidden beneath the stitching, and on it were 6 handwritten initials. The boys from 1984. Michael, Daniel, and the others. Rebecca looked at me. "Mom put those there, didn't she?" I nodded. "She wanted you to remember them." I ran my fingers across the faded names. I never forgot. Rebecca sat beside me. Neither did they. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. "Dad?" "Yes?" "I still don't understand everything about football." I laughed. "That makes 2 of us." She laughed too. And for the first time in a very long time, my daughter wasn't looking at me as an old man who had become irrelevant. She was simply looking at her father. The next morning, I hung the scarf beside the photograph. Not because I wanted to remember the past, but because I finally understood what the past was supposed to do. It wasn't supposed to hold you there. It was supposed to remind you how far you'd come. And whenever Ethan steps onto a football field now, he looks toward the sideline first. Not because he needs my advice. Because he knows I'll be there. And maybe that's what being a grandfather really means. Not telling your grandchildren how to live. Not forcing them to follow your dreams. Just standing there long enough so they know someone believes they can achieve theirs.